Item number 57, Resolution Public Hearing 18-111, recommending that Ramsey County install bicycle lanes on Prosperity Avenue, Hazelwood Street, and the Prosperity Road from Maryland Avenue to Larpenteur Avenue.
And I believe we have a staff report. And Mr. Hanson, I believe you were going to do staff report for number 57 and 58 combined.
Yeah.
Somewhat combined.
Combine them for the sake of brevity.
Okay.
If that works.
Sure. Welcome.
Thank you. So Council President Brenmo and members of the Council, Luke Hanson representing the Department of Public Works. I'm before you tonight with two similar resolutions for bike lane projects on Prosperity, Hazelwood, and on Lexington Parkway. And I'll be, I think just for process, I'll combine the staff report now, but I'll be available for questions before and after both hearings, should there be any for staff. For both projects tonight, the city partnered with the county to lead a joint engagement process, and that included things like notifying and presenting at the district councils where these projects are proposed, sending mailers to residents and stakeholders within 200 feet of the project corridor, holding project meetings to present information publicly on the project as well as receive feedback, and establishing project websites where people could access information about our proposals. On Prosperity Hazelwood, this year, Ramsey County is planning to chip seal Prosperity Avenue between Maryland and Arlington. They're also proposing to resurface Hazelwood Street and Prosperity Road between Arlington and Larpenteur. And sorry, this is a little confusing. It's one contiguous corridor, but it has 3 street names, which can be a little bit of a challenge. The bike plan recommends bike lanes within the project limits. And that's, again, between Maryland and Larpenteur. And as a result, staff is proposing to implement bike lanes along with the county's work planned for this year. Between Maryland and Larpenteur, the existing street widths are such that installing bike lanes requires removing parking on one side of the roadway. Parking removal is proposed for the east side of the corridor between Maryland and Larpenteur Avenues. As we do for all bike projects that have parking impacts, we conducted parking occupancy counts to get a sense of how many people are parking along the corridor. Over the course of 13 counts on Prosperity and Hazelwood, we found that on average, 12% of the available parking spaces were occupied. And what that data suggests is that even after installing bike lanes, there is sufficient capacity to meet the parking demand that we observed during our counts. This project also provides important connectivity to existing bike lanes on Phelan Boulevard, that's directly to the south of this project, as well as for intersecting bikeway projects that are identified in the bike plan but have yet to be implemented. The project is also located next to 2 schools and helps to support biking as an option for this community. Transitioning now to Lexington Parkway. The county is also proposing to resurface Lexington this year between James Avenue and University Avenue. Again, to take advantage of the cost efficiencies of pairing bike facilities with existing maintenance work, staff is proposing to install bike lanes on Lexington between James Avenue and St. Clair Avenue with the county's work this year. For 2 blocks between James and Juliet Avenue, the existing street width requires removing parking on one side of the roadway. And then for 1 block between Juliet and Jefferson, installing bike lanes requires removing parking on both sides of the roadway. That's to accommodate a turn lane. As a result, staff is proposing parking removal on the east side of Lexington Parkway for the 2 blocks between James and Juliet, and then on both sides of the street between Juliet and Jefferson. Again, that's 1 block. This recommendation comes out of an understanding that there's more parking capacity and use on the west side of the street. And there are some sightline benefits to removing parking on the east side, and that is staff's preference, but we also acknowledge that parking removal, the project works with parking removal on either side of the street, and we consider either a safe option. We also performed parking counts on Lexington, and over the course of 21 counts, we found that on average, 13% of the available parking spaces were used. Because we're talking about 3 blocks, that equates to about 4 cars between both sides of the street. Again, this data suggests that there is sufficient parking capacity after bike lanes to absorb all the demand that we measured. These bike facilities would connect directly to bike lanes just south of the project limit. Currently, bike lanes stop at James Avenue, so this would be a direct connection to them. They also connect to the Jefferson Bikeway and a bike facility on St. Clair as well. And then finally, the intent of both the projects before us tonight is to improve the safety of the roadway for all users, to give people a dedicated space to operate in the roadway, to reduce pedestrians' exposure to motorized traffic, and to provide right-sized lane widths for motorized traffic on the street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Mr. Hanson? Ms. Prince?
I noticed that the District 2 Community Council sent a letter in support of the bike lanes. However, they also mentioned that they would like consideration of a crosswalk at Ivy in Prosperity for school safety purposes, and I wondered if we are able to support their request.
President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, when we develop a striping plan, should this project be approved, we can look at that intersection, and at that time we will work with county staff to determine if that's the appropriate location for a crosswalk. And my message to District 2 was also that that's something that staff is willing to take a look at.
Great. Thank you. Are there other questions? Okay. So we're going to do the public hearing on these separately. So thanks for letting us hear them both together. But we're going to start out having a public hearing on Prosperity, Hazelwood, Prosperity, which is one road between Maryland and Larpenteur Avenue. So this is a public hearing. If there's anyone here in opposition to this proposal, we'd like to hear from you now. And remember to give us your name, your neighborhood, and then sign in when you're done testifying. You can come out, just kind of line up, then we know how many people there are here. Welcome.
Hi, my name's Doug Collier. I'm a caretaker at 1391 and 1399 Hazelwood Street. And on Prosperity, that in the wintertime, that's where a lot of our tenants park. That's First Street that's plowed. And we have to get our lots plowed. And I was just, there's not many bikers in the wintertime, and I was hoping that we could park on both sides of the street in the winter. And that's it.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Can you make sure you sign in?
Hi, my name is Mary Wade. I live at 1540 Iowa, which is a corner of Iowa and Hazelwood. To put this bike path in, you're taking roadway away from the motorist. And like he said, in the winter months, there are no bikes. I watched our cameras, the video. 2 bicyclists a day, if you're lucky. 2. We are losing. You're going to have parking on one side, not the other. These bike lanes are 7 feet wide. That's 14 feet that's taken away from the motorist. That street isn't wide in the first place. It's getting narrower. Now, as motorists, we have to yield the right-of-way of buses when they pull out. These buses are going to pull in to stop. What about the bike path? So if the person pedaling doesn't stop, who's at fault? We share our roadway and our sidewalks, but now the bicyclists get to have their own private section of the road for no one else to enter. Why is that? We bought our homes where we did because we can park on the street. We didn't buy our homes in Minneapolis. We pay property tax. I'm a corner lot. I pay double. We pay to register our cars. We pay for insurance. The bicyclists don't pay any of that. But they're getting 14 feet of our road for personal use. I don't see how that's justifiable at all.
And as a point of clarification, you said that the bicyclists don't pay for registration and insurance for cars, but they do pay for property taxes. You making that distinction, correct? I mean,
not all of them. They're pretty young.
Okay, I think it's important to make that distinction.
They're pretty young.
And many people who ride bikes have cars as well.
I understand some do, not all.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Linda Lampret. I live at 1591 Hazelwood. I've been at that residency for 42 years. The bike, I did send in a letter I did notice today that it was in your attachments. I was unable to make that meeting because I had hip surgery a month before that. Plus, that night there was that major there was a major snowstorm. Most of our residents weren't able to go to that meeting at Duluth and Case because of the snowstorm we were all digging out. One thing I'm concerned about, as I said in the letter, was the losing residential parking. The other one's safety. And the other one was the location for the meeting, but the meeting's already been done, so that doesn't matter. The residential parking, we're a snow emergency route, and we get plowed a lot, but we never get plowed curb to curb. This year we've lost 1 foot on each side the first snowfall. The second one, it went up to 2 feet that we lost on both sides. This last snowfall that we just had, we lost 3 feet, and that was after the snow had already been taken away. So 3 feet into the parking on the one side leaves 4 feet for the vehicle to park. Vehicles aren't that big. A lot of them are bigger than that. My truck would be over into the bike lane. I've got a concern about the French immersion school area. The buses all go on the west side, and the parents and volunteers and anybody who wants to go to the school park on the east side, so they'll lose that parking prospect for the French immersion schools. Our street has a whole lot of traffic. We have buses that come 4 times an hour a lot of times, the MTC buses. We have many school buses because of the Frost Lake School, the presentation school, and the French immersion school. We also have very many big delivery trucks that come to take supplies to all those schools. I'm concerned about there being a residential parking, a bike path, and then driving. Kids going in between the parked cars and all that traffic, I feel that's a big concern for safety for 9 and under. Ones that are older, they could figure it out, but the younger ones, that's going to be a big concern for them. And there are kids that use that during the summer. The concern I also have is losing the residential parking for all 12 months. During the winter months, there aren't that many people that use bikes on roads in our area. We have maybe 4 people that I know of that use them quite a bit. But if we lose that curb to curb, that's going to take away a lot of the parking. Also, the study that was done for parking in our area, there were 15 times, but 3 of them were daytime, 3 of them were nighttime, 3 of them were weekends, 3 of them were, I didn't get to see it all. I went on the computer today and looked at it. But 15 times, that doesn't really show what's the parking area is for there. During celebration times, we use a lot of parking on the street for both Christmas time, Easter's, Hmong celebrations. A lot of the families have a lot of families that park there, and we did buy those houses because of the parking and stuff for our convenience. I would just like to say that if it does go through, I would like the proposal to be looked at as a year, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. If there aren't bikes using it, then I think it should be restored to residential parking if that does come to pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. And is there anyone else here who would like to be heard in opposition? Okay. So now, are there folks here who'd like to be heard in support of this proposal? Welcome.
Thank you, Council President, Council members. My name is Eric Sadoff. I live in the Payne-Phelan neighborhood. I'm a daily bicycle commuter, daily user of the trail along Phelan Boulevard. And the proposal is sort of an extension of the bike lanes on Phelan Boulevard. Once you get to Maryland, they end. This is a route that I already use to go to St. Paul Pediatric Dentistry on White Bear, where my children go to the dentist. It's also a route that we've used to go to the French Immersion School numerous times, summer camp events, things like that. So I ride it with my family. My wife really doesn't like to ride the street. One of the things that is difficult about the street when it has low parking like it does is as you try to ride on the right side, there's a lot of space, but then all of a sudden there's a car there. And so as a rider, you have to weave into traffic and you have to come back out and in and out. And it makes it very unpredictable for the drivers. It makes it feel very dangerous as a rider. So this is a route that goes by 3 schools, as we just heard. Saying no to this route is, I think, going against the city's commitment towards safe routes for schools. So I strongly support the proposal to put bike lanes on the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, members of the council, my name is Ethan Ostin, North End. I'm co-chair of the St. Paul Bicycle Coalition, and I've come to support this project for a number of reasons. First of all, I hear the concern about the number of current bikers on the street, but I think part of the intention of putting bicycle facilities on a street is the hope that by making that facility safer, it'll encourage more usage. The other thing that I would say is that there's been an extensive public process for this particular route. There are bike lanes on Phelan Boulevard South. There are wide shoulders on Prosperity Road to the north. All the residents on the street were notified for the meeting. They've been notified by the district council. The district council supports the bike lane proposal, which they haven't done for similar proposals in the past. And I just think it's a great project that deserves your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who'd like to be heard in support? Great. With that, Mr. Bostrom moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails. Mr. Bostrom.
Well, Madam President, I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening and for the meetings and so forth that they've attended. And I would just like to And basically, what this does is this supports bicycle routes. And the interesting part about Prosperity Avenue, Hazelwood, and Prosperity Road, I know that really well. I grew up over.
Do you think you could just pull your mic a little
I would be
closer?
more than happy to pull that up a little bit. Thank you. Apologize. I grew up on Prosperity Avenue for several years. As a matter of fact, my folks built a house on Prosperity Avenue. The words that I've been hearing from a lot of folks out there is we have some large families that have big gatherings, and for folks that are not familiar with Prosperity Avenue runs from Maryland to Arlington, and then it becomes Hazelwood to Idaho, and then at Idaho it becomes Prosperity Road and goes into Maplewood. Prosperity Avenue down between Maryland and Ivy is 44 feet wide. Now, 44 feet doesn't mean much unless you take a look at the width of other roadways in the city. And one of the examples that I used before, and I'll use it again, is St. Clair. St. Clair is a street that is 40 feet wide, and St. Clair allows parking on both sides of the street. They have Sharrow bike lanes that run parallel to the parked cars. And what really gets me about this is we have a street now that's 4 feet wider than St. Clair, but in addition to that, we still want to take the parking off from one side. And my point is, if we can do it on St. Clair with parking on both sides and a 40-foot street, we're adding actually 2 more feet on each side on Prosperity Avenue. It's a much better deal, and it still maintains the parking. Another interesting feature of Prosperity Avenue from Maryland to Arlington, the only cross street in there is Ivy. There are no side streets. There are no side streets between Ivy and Arlington. People have no chance to park off-street, around the corner, or anything like that. There aren't any alleys. The street is the only place that there is. It's not unusual to go down that street if there's a big family gathering, and the street is loaded with cars on both sides of the street. So I would recommend the substitute that I passed out, which supports the bike routes, and they're consistent with the bicycle plan, and it still allows the neighbors, the folks that live there, to be able to use the parking, and it provides, I think, a safety measure for the bicyclists also. So I would like to submit this as a substitute motion.
So you move this as a version 2, and it is
Yes,
not
ma'am. Yeah,
in Legistar, it's just
Yes.
on, it is in Legistar as version 2.
right.
Okay. Are there any thoughts on this version 2, amended version? I mean, I guess I would just start out by saying procedurally, we just held and closed a public hearing on version 1, which was also the version that went out and was vetted in the community. So I'm very uncomfortable with this amendment coming in, especially at this time, given that no one's had an opportunity to weigh in on this, and no one will except for the council because we closed the public hearing. I have other thoughts as well, but other colleagues, anything?
I mean,
Ms. Henningsen?
just off the top of my head, I don't know the history on St. Clair, but just because we have Sherrill's on St. Clair doesn't mean that that's the best facility for that road either. So I don't know that we use that as a precedent moving forward in terms of what's a safe facility.
Madam President, if I may respond.
Mr. Bostrom.
The point is that it works on St. Clair. It works on St. Clair. So why in the world would we deny the people that live on Prosperity the same courtesy that we allow the people that live on St. Clair? There's 4 more feet on Prosperity Avenue to do exactly the same thing that we're doing on St. Clair. That's my point. And the other problem is, again, as I pointed out before, there are no options for off-street parking. There simply are no options because it's probably close to 1,300 to 1,400 feet between Maryland and Ivy. And if you can't find a place to park, you're going to have to probably walk the equivalent of 2 or 3 blocks to get to wherever you're going because there are no options. There's no way to cut through, nothing. It's a very unique situation out there. If it was a 40-foot street, okay, you might be able to convince me. But when we got a street that's this wide and it's done on narrower streets, I just simply cannot see putting the people that live there through something like this.
And maybe before we go further, is Mr. Hansen here? Would he like to weigh in on the successes or the pros and cons of the choices we made on St. Clair?
Sure. Council President Brenmoen, our experience on St. Clair to date has been that while we did implement a bike facility, people don't feel particularly safe or protected on it. We've exclusively heard negative feedback about it, and I think going forward, we're looking to move away from sharrows on busier roadways like this. Part of the intent of this project, in addition to safety, is to capture a larger group of people who would be interested in biking. And Public Works recommendation reflects that with a proposal for bike lanes. We believe that presents a safer and more comfortable riding environment for more people. Just one clarification also in terms of street width here. Prosperity Avenue from Maryland to Arlington is 40 feet in width. Hazelwood Street is 40 feet in width. And then Prosperity Road from Idaho to Larpenteur is where it widens out to 44 feet. So most of the corridor is 40 feet in width.
Right, thank you. And don't go too far. Ms. Naker.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Hansen, I appreciate sort of the background and progress to date on how things are actually going on St. Clair. Can you talk a little bit about how when the initial comprehensive citywide bike plan was created, I know different routes were evaluated for different types of treatments, Sharrows among them. Can you talk about what conditions made Sharrows the recommendation versus bike lanes versus separated facilities?
Sure. Generally, Council President Bremo and Councilmember Naker, during the planning process for the bike lane, the citywide bike plan, we looked at a variety of street factors when we made these recommendations. Included amongst them are connectivity, the amount of daily traffic on the roadway, the width of the street. Generally, when there were higher traffic volumes on what we identified as a bike route, we looked to propose either an off-street trail or a bike lane, appreciating that there's higher traffic and that's a more appropriate recommendation for those facilities. There are a couple of instances in which there are what are called enhanced shared lanes, which includes just a share like we have similar to St. Clair. And I think that reflected some difficult opportunities on our street system, smaller connections. I think our experience since developing the bike plan in 2015 is that going forward we would look to make fewer of those recommendations, especially for higher volume streets.
Great. Mr. Bostrom.
I think it's also should be pointed out that running parallel or nearly parallel with Prosperity Avenue is the Vento Trail, which can pick up right down at Maryland and Johnson Parkway, and that will run all the way out to Larpenteur or however far you want to go out on it. And if people are really interested in just using it as a throughway, actually the Vento Trail is probably a much better route to take. You can get off at Arlington, and you could get off at Idaho, where we just put in another bike lane up there. So if a person, and their bike lanes on Larpenteur, so there are many options. And actually, it's an easier ride because the grade on Vento Trail is much less severe than what you find when you start getting on Prosperity Avenue heading up there.
Ms. Prince.
I'm not sure if there's what the timing is on this. I am definitely sympathetic to the parking issue in that part of the street where there isn't a street grid. We're dealing with that on Upper Afton where we put in bike lanes, and I continue to hear a tremendous amount of negative feedback from the community in terms of having lost all parking between White Bear and Burns Avenue. I'm wondering if we have any time to lay this over to look at this.
Are you referring to the amendment?
Yeah.
You'd like to lay over?
To lay over.
What's in front of us is the amendment.
Well, it's a version 2.
Well, we haven't voted on it.
Okay, but I mean, if we had the opportunity to lay over this matter to consider.
Well, okay, I think procedurally, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Other thoughts? Well, and I guess I do want to add, I had the privilege of attending a session with Gil Penalosa yesterday, and I know that all of us hear from our constituents on a daily basis about the speed of traffic through our neighborhoods and just the recklessness, the distractedness of drivers. And one of the things that we've been doing very intentionally, I heard someone testify about how the lanes are getting narrower and we're taking space away from motorists. And I want to be clear that we're doing that on purpose. We're doing that because narrower lanes means cars drive slower. We're doing that because when we define where the bike lane is, we know where the bike is supposed to be, and cars know where the bike is supposed to be, and everyone feels safer because they have a place on the road. And we're talking about changing a culture where for years and years our primary focus was how to get cars as fast as they could through our city and out to the suburbs or around. And now we're trying to make our communities and our neighborhoods as walkable and livable as possible. And some of the things that we're doing as part of that is shrinking lanes and removing parking. So this is the momentum. This is where we're going. This is in alignment with our bike plan. And again, I'm not going to support this amendment, and I think that we need to take this to a vote and decide what we're going to do with this, and then look at the larger idea, as a whole about the project. So. Are there other thoughts or comments on this amendment by Mr. Bostrom at the table after the public hearing is closed? Ms. Henningsen.
Well, I just wanted to note, went back and looked at the Cleveland bike lane conversation, and we had segments of Cleveland where there was 100% parking utilization, and the parking utilization on this project is quite low, and we're still leaving parking on one side of the street. So I don't know how we can go through with one project with that kind of utilization and not on this. So I'm on Council President Brenmo's page on this one.
Mr. Tao.
Look, the way I see how we construct our street, and I'm a homeowner, and I feel that the way we design our street from the get-go, it was designed incorrectly, because it was only designed to move a certain population or a certain type of vehicle, a certain type of transportation. And so I think from a big picture, bike lane actually is a tool that we use to correct how we construct our street going forward, because as we diversify how people travel in the city of St. Paul, I think it's critical that we design our street in a way that works for everybody and that protects everybody. And I understand that we are taking some parking space away, and I would feel, if someone came and take parking away from my street, I think it's going to take some adjustment. I think it's going to take it's almost shocking in a way. But if I look at the big picture, I see that this is actually good for the city of St. Paul, and that it's more equitable when we are protecting and promoting all sorts and all modes of transportation. So I think that this is a good opportunity for us to utilize Ramsey County and bringing down the cost to ensure that we have different modes of transportation. So I think for this project, the lanes make sense.
Right. So any other thoughts on the version 2? All right, we're going to go through roll call vote. Mr. Bostrom would like to move version 2. Roll call.
Tao?
No.
Excuse me, Tolbert. Bostrom?
Aye.
Henningsen?
No.
Naker?
No.
Prince?
Yes.
Council President Brenmon.
No.
3 in favor, 4 opposed, being council members Tao, Henningsen, Naker, and Council President Brenmoen. The motion fails.
All right, so on the version 1, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I will move approval, and we'll do a roll call.
Tao?
Yes.
Tolbert? No. Bostrom?
No.
Henningsen?
Yes.
Naker?
Yes.
Prince?
Yes.
Council President Brenmon.
Yes.
5 in favor, 2 opposed, being council members Tolbert and Bostrom. The resolution is adopted. Item number 58, Resolution Public Hearing 18-112, recommending that Ramsey County implement bicycle lanes on Lexington Parkway from James Avenue to St. Clair Avenue.
And we had a staff report previously, so this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to be heard in opposition to the Lexington Parkway from James Avenue to St. Clair Avenue project? Opposition. Is there anyone here who would like? Why don't you come? We'll make it on the fence category. Yeah, come on up. We'll put you in the opposed because you want to tweak it a little bit. Okay, come on up.
I'm Diana.
All the
Speak
way.
at the mic.
Hi, I'm Diana Thorne. I live at 368 Lexington. I've lived there for 30 years. It's a very busy street. I'm at the top of the bluff. I'm on the east side of the road. There's no alleyway. So you're proposing taking parking on one side of the street from James to Juliet, but leaving parking on the other side of the street. My section of the street, which is at the top of the bluff, is from Juliet Street to Jefferson. They are proposing stripping parking on both on both sides of the road. That is devastating for the 8 houses that are on that short block. I will not be able, well, speaking for all 8 houses, especially the 4 houses on the east side, since there's no alleyway, what do we do with contractors? I can't have my 83-year-old mother and have Christmas anymore at my house if she's got to walk 2 blocks to my house. I would like to recommend, I just discovered this week, I am for bike lanes. But since we're landlocked, and James to Juliet will be able to have parking on one side of the street, but they're talking about taking parking on my side of the street from Juliet to Jefferson. Could we consider what you did on Montreal, which I just discovered the other day, and that is you have a neon bike sign, and the street is appliqued with a bike, and it says share the road. So therefore, you'd leave 4 spots for parking on one side of the street, as opposed to getting rid of all 8. It would just be great for our neighbor, that all 8 houses to be at least be able to utilize 3 to 4 parking spaces. And the rest of Lexington Parkway, if you want to strafe it, you know, for bike lanes to go through, but if there's just something you could do for 8 houses who are going to be so devastated with no parking, especially all the landlocked people.
Can I just ask, I wasn't listening closely enough. You were on the west side or the east side?
I'm on the east
You're
side.
on the east side.
Everybody from James down the hill, it's a huge hill,
Yeah.
it's a bluff.
Yep. I just didn't hear which side you're on.
Yeah.
And then my other question was, is Mr. Hanson still here? Is this the area that we were talking about, that it could be actually taken off either side, or? Okay. I'm just trying to get oriented. Okay,
Right,
thank you.
so I'm just asking for my section to leave at least, if you want to leave parking on both sides, great, and share the road, but if you want to take it, and so we can only have parking on one half of the street, which would be like 3 to 4 spaces. Currently, there's 8 spaces for parking right now. They're talking of stripping both sides. So if we could leave parking on one side of the street and have it be share the road for that small section with the neon sign, would be so greatly appreciated. I can't even tell you all how much it would mean. I mean, and then I also agree with the woman who spoke earlier. If some reason this does not work out with the bikers, because you've got to be in pretty darn good shape. And I bike. I'm sorry, I don't bike up that section of the hill. I go around. Sorry to tell you that, but I'm just being honest. I would also like it put in too, if this bike situation does not work out, that parking is put back on both sides from James to Jefferson.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And make
Appreciate
sure you,
it.
Sure you
Thank
sign in. Is there anyone else here who is in opposition or kind of opposition? All right, we will move on to people who are here in support. Is there anyone here in support of this project on Lexington between James and St. Clair Avenue? Okay. We're ready. And it looks like there's 8 of you.
Hello, Council. I'll be quick since it looks like there's a lot of people willing to speak today. But I just wanted to speak to the...
Before you get started,
Oh.
can you just please let us know who you are and where you live?
My apologies. I'm Tom Bastian. I live in Highland Park. And I just have a lot of friends up and down Lexington. But it's a road that I do not travel on because of the lack of facilities there, and it is quite dangerous in my perception. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Quinn DeMaster. I live on Bayard and Milton. I just don't like it when bike lanes just end and they don't have any more bike lane.
Thank you. That's a good point. Thank you. I agree, too. You don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm Dana DeMaster, also on Baird and Milton, and I just wanted to say that we use this stretch often, not necessarily biking in Lexington with the kids, but we are up using Trader Joe's and connecting up to friends and different activities, and we live at the bottom of the hill, so we're constantly going up. But this is a really important connection because it goes over Ide Mill, and there's not a lot of ways for bicyclists to get over Ide Mill, and so to get over that gap, you either have to go over to Griggs or down to Victoria, and that's either going down that big steep hill and then right back up that big steep hill, or quite a ways out of your way on Griggs. And so this would be an important, it's a small connection, but it's really big in terms of the gaps that it fills. So we would love to have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm James Sluggers. I live at 183 South Chatsworth in Summit Hill. Just at the top of the hill. I avoid that section of Lexington when I'm biking because it is very dangerous, and with a better connection, you'd say it cuts a whole lot of space out of any paths south. As Dana mentioned, there's just not a lot of connections going south between St. Clair and Point South. So I'm in support. Make it a safer lane.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. I'm Willie Ranieri. I live on the corner of Jefferson and Lexington, and actually starting this week, I start my commute on Lexington, and it is probably the worst part of my commute. I immediately try to get over going north and getting onto Oxford or literally any other street I can because it is such a dangerous and unpleasant ride. I'm fully in support of this bike lane, and I just wanted to express my support. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy Roberts. I live at 360 Lexington, so directly on Lexington, so I have to bike this stretch to get to multiple places. And I have the same feeling that other people have echoed, where it's not fun to bike on. You feel nervous. Cars have to go around you and slow down, and having a bike lane there would just be so much safer, I think, for both drivers and bikers.
Thank you.
Andrew Singer, co-chair of the St. Paul Bike Coalition. I live on Berkeley Avenue near the corner of Cleveland and St. Clair. My mom is in Shalom Home on West 7th, and my niece works at 7th Street Social off of 7th, and I would confirm what other people have said, which is that there's not a lot of great ways to go south and get off the bluff. You have Jefferson, and you have this. And I think that Lexington is incredibly high-speed traffic. People use it as a commute route still, and I think it's important to continue the lanes to St. Clair. And I am a property owner, and I pay taxes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Council President Brent Moen, council members, I'm Brian Martinson. I live Ward 4, Precinct 7. I also bike on Lexington. Before I should mention, I'm a residential representative on the McAllister Groveland Community Council, and I am the Transportation Committee Chair. That committee has already placed something in support of these bike lanes before you, so I won't repeat that. I'm actually here to speak for myself as someone who bikes year-round commuting. Bikes are for transportation, not for sport, as far as I'm concerned. And I think we need to think about being bikes for transport, not sport, a lot more often in the decisions we make. I want to thank you for what you have done to implement the grid structure of the comprehensive bike plan to date, which this Lexington Lanes is a part of, making connections. I ride that route. I work in Bloomington. And to get to the council meetings that I have at Edgecombe, I have to go up Lexington, and I'm usually pretty tuckered by the time I get to that stretch north of Randolph because I've come up from Shepherd Road. So I'm going uphill and I'm out of wind and I'm going slow, but I do feel the fear that other people fear riding there, and I'm a strong rider. I'm not afraid to play with traffic, right? So I do it, but I know that for everyone like me, there's got to be 99 people who are just not willing to do that. And if you put bike lanes there, that's going to make it much more possible for people who are terrified to actually get out there and safely bike and use. And that's going to increase the equity of transportation in multiple modes in our city. And that is, bikes have to be thought of as part of the equity solution in St. Paul. And if we're denying people in various parts of the city access to ways of getting around that don't involve them having to spend $10,000 a year on a car. I own 2 cars. We pay taxes on them. I actually own 2 properties. We pay property taxes on those as well. So yes, we do pay taxes. And yes, we do pay for our fair share. But the roads are for everybody, not just for cars. So I'm just speaking in support of the lanes on Lexington and thanking for the rest of the work that you do to make the grid connect elsewhere as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Other people in support? If not, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails. Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody who came out and also thank Luke from Public Works who worked on this. I know there was a long community process involved with this where notice was given to both, first the members on the east side, and then later they went back and looked on the west side and explored both options in order to implement these bike lanes, which is an important component of continuing to make Lexington a safer road, a project that started long before I was on the council. As when I was growing up, Lexington was basically the cut through from 35 to 94, and it was 4 lanes and very dangerous to cross or do anything on. It's gotten a lot safer. Granted, there's a lot of potholes out there right now, but this will add one more component and also fill into the bike network that we're doing on Jefferson. When weighing the 2 sides, I think Mr. Hansen mentioned it early on. They did look at the west side or the east side. In order to do bike lanes, you need to remove parking on either. The east side has less parking spots than the west side, and it was utilized less in the study that they had, as well as most, if not all, of the homes on the east side have off-street parking either through a driveway or a garage, although they might not have an alley. With all those things being considered, it seems that that makes the most sense. So I'm going to make a motion. If other people want to comment, but I'll eventually make a motion to approve this as recommended.
Right. Mr. Tolbert made a motion. Is there any further discussion on this? Ms. Naker?
Thank you. I'll support the motion, and I appreciate the comments that were made about how dangerous it feels, not only when sharrows are used, when there's a separated bike lane, but also when the bike lanes start and stop, because I experienced that all over our city as well. I am sensitive to the comments that were made about the loss of parking where both sides between Juliet and Jefferson. And I guess I was just wondering, Mr. Hansen, I'm looking at the map, it looks like parking is proposed to be removed from a portion of that block, but is it true that the northern part will still retain its on-street parking or not?
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Nicker, parking is prohibited for the northern half of that block today to accommodate a turn lane. So there are approximately 6 spaces, 3 on each side, that would need to be removed to continue bike lanes for that half block.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Henningsen?
I'd like to echo Mr. Tolbert's comments, thanking Mr. Hansen and in particular your role in coordinating with the county, and thank the county for their work helping to implement our bike plan, and this aligns with their All Abilities Transportation Network policy. So really exciting to kind of be moving forward together with the county.
Great. All right, if there's no other comments, motion's been made. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted.
And is there anything else to come before us tonight? Seeing none, adjourned.
Just some pictures with the scouts.